Welcome back. If you've been in the first session, welcome to the stage. If you're joining us for the first time, just as a repeat request from when we kicked off, phones, laptops on silent, ideally off if possible, just so that it doesn't interrupt the session. I will hand over to Ben in a second, but we'll allow time kind of for questions at the end. But I know this is going to be a slightly interactive session as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ben White, who is the UK and I Business Development Manager for Fortinet, who's going to talk us all through operational technology. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. So my expectation has been broken. There's more people in this room than I expected. So first interactive question, who knows what operational technology is? Thank you. Okay. Who doesn't know what operational technology is? Okay, that's fine. So, as Jill said, I'm Ben White. I am the UK and I Business Development Manager for Fortinet in operational technology. So my journey on operational technology started over 15 years ago. And the easiest way to explain how I got into this was I could draw pretty pictures. That was the simple way. There were interfaces that operators used at power stations, water treatment works, in the nuclear sector, in the defence sector, and I could make them pretty pictures that then allowed them to operate the process of that environment. And then from that, over that 15 years, I was able to then figure out how those screens were animated by connecting to things like PLCs, programmable logic controllers, remote telemetry units, to see the interfaces between the two that were signals of devices that were out on plant. So if you think of a power station, that could be the generator, it could be the turbine, it could be sensors on the boiler, it could be drives. There's a lot of machinery out there that is providing information that the operators need to understand and know to be able to make sure that that process is running safely. So I'm now with Fortinet, I'm getting close to a year. But prior to that, I worked for one of the I worked in the UK for a company called Emerson Automation Solutions, who are one of the global largest automation providers. I worked in their distributed control system, so I'm going to try my hardest to keep this as an acronym and an amnesty, where I don't start overloading you of DCS, PLC, SCADA, all those kind of things where you're going to be straight on your phone Googling them. Emerson have a footprint across the globe. I think in certain areas like life sciences and pharmaceutical, they are the de facto standard for all manufacturing facilities for the control systems that are used to make active pharmaceutical ingredients, COVID vaccinations, and so on and so on. So Emerson have a big position to play in that OT space. And I was brought in by them to head up their UK and Ireland cybersecurity. And I remember my interview straight away. My boss, who became my boss, asked me, "What do you know about cybersecurity?" And my honest answer was nothing, but I'm eager to learn because I've spent the last 10 to 12 years in OT. I've done networks, I've done SCADA systems, I've done PLCs, and I've learned those. And then I moved into project management, program management, and I moved into then commercial resolution, as not all projects are run successfully. So the customers that I've worked for, hopefully will recognize some of the logos. So I've worked with Pfizer on a global cybersecurity rollout program across all their manufacturing facilities. And with that, I worked between IT and OT. It was an IT-led initiative, but it was being delivered in an OT field. I've worked with Thames Water, and I've worked with them on a cybersecurity approach. I've worked with them as an engineer, and I've also worked with them as a project manager going into commercial resolution. So the interesting fact about Thames Water, if you ever use a toilet in London, my control system that my engineers put in is taking that away for you and is cleaning it for you. So that's my interesting fact about London. GSK, I've worked with the main sites up here in Scotland. Syngenta, I've worked with over in Glasgow. Sellafield, who are based down in Cumbria, I've worked with them a lot. So these are just a few of the clients that I've worked with over the last 15 years. I'm based in Newcastle-under-Lyme in Staffordshire. And as I like to say, that's the proper Newcastle, because that's where a lot of more famous people came from Geordieland. So that's where I'm from, but I was actually born on the south coast in Eastbourne. So I was born there, but I was made in Stoke-on-Trent / Newcastle-under-Lyme. So what we're going to talk about today is operational technology. So first bit of audience participation, would anybody like to give me who they work for, and we'll see if there's operational technology in your environment, so those who don't know what OT is can get an understanding of what OT is at a very simple level across their business. Currys? Yeah. Okay. So, sorry, what was your name again?
Matthew.
Matthew. So Matthew works at Currys. So everybody's brought something from Currys. He's facing this way, so it's all right if you raise your hands or you don't raise your hands. He's not going to pick you out. Okay, so Currys have probably just had their biggest sales day this week or last week, Black Friday or Cyber Monday. So they'll spend, from my experience, and I have worked in warehousing, manufacturing and logistics, they'll spend probably 3 months prior to that getting ready for the speed at which they need to be able to take orders in, process orders, get them out to warehousing and logistics centres, and then get them shipped to customers. So at that point in time, you'll go through the internet, you'll place your order, that order will go to an order management system within their IT world. That then will be transferred down into operational technology to either allow for automated picking in the warehouse, where it will go to an aisle designated where all those TVs are, and it will go and pick the TV, bring it down, put it on a conveying system. That conveying system then will run through scanners, weigh scales to be able to work out what the load is, to be able to figure out what the postaging and the packaging needs to be able to send that information to the third-party logistics team like a Yodel or somebody like that. That then will go through, they'll get a barcode that's applied to it that's come from the order management system. Straight away there, you've got a lot of IT-OT convergence, and you've got a lot of OT that is doing most of the work. In some instances, you might have manual people who are just walking around manually picking things, and they'll be using handheld devices. Those handheld devices will be scanning using RFID. All that is operational technology in that environment, because they'll pick it, they'll place it onto the conveying system in a box, and that conveying system then will be used to be sorted where it needs to go to next in the warehouse. So just as an example there's a lot of interaction and convergence between IT and OT, and there's a lot of work in OT. And my role is to try and educate customers now around the risk of OT, because there is a lot of risk in OT. And very simple way of putting OT is, if you think about what we do in IT, we don't do this in OT. OT is a very stagnant area where we don't like change. And I can speak from experience, because every Friday, my customers never wanted us to deploy a change, because they wanted a safe, steady system over a weekend. If we did make a change, you guys were on call. So if anything happens, you've just left site, you need to turn around now, come back up the M62, and come back to this site and fix the problem that you've just made. So there are a lot of things that you have to do to be able to be confident and make the operator confident that what you're doing is going to keep their system running. So what we've done, and I think this is our 5th version of the report, we go out across the globe to our customers that we work with in OT, and we ask them a subset of questions to be able to start to gain feedback on areas we are seeing changing, and we want the feedback from customers if they agree, disagree. But also, we also want to get that information to be able to bring back to the market, to be able to broaden other people's understanding of what's going on. So this report, we're going to go into 4 key insights. But I'm not just going to give you the key insight. I'm going to try and apply some of my experience and my understanding of how I see either that working or that not working, or how it could be an issue that the business need to think about in the way that they're going to go forward. And also, I know we said about question and answer at the end, but if you do have any questions that pop up during me talking, please feel free to ask. So we've interviewed 570 OT professionals, and that'll be from engineers all the way up to CISOs. We've done it across the globe, so we've hit 20 plus different locations, and we've gone across multiple different sectors. So that can be manufacturing, oil and gas upstream, downstream, It can be telecom providers who are working in water treatment for remote assets. It can be a lot of different areas. But the first critical insight we're going to have a look at is that OT cybersecurity responsibility is moving from OT personnel now to cybersecurity experts. So this is the first audience question, okay? So does your organisation plan to roll out OT responsibility under your CISO if you believe there is OT in your organisation? Just raise your hands if that's a yes. Okay. So I was in Dublin on Tuesday presenting to an OT audience, and I've probably got the same level of response in the room that's an IT event as I did with the OT event. And the reason for this is what we've identified, and it might not have been communicated in organisations yet, is that what we can see is that the alignment of OT security is to be placed under the CISO from those that we have interviewed. And you can see from the 2022 results, it was around, I think it was 87%, and now it's in 2023, it's 95% where it's moving, or it's likely to be moved in the next 12 months. So just bear with me 1 moment, sorry. I'll just have a drink. I have a cough that won't go away.
There's no cover off when it's already under.
So what they've, from the question that they've asked, the assumption is that if you say yes, it was already under, or else it was the going to. So the 95% is it's already covering that it's under them, or it's planned to in the next 12 months. So that's how they've captured it. Another interesting fact is that in OT, if you ever talk to somebody who works in operational technology, they will tend to tell you that they have more than one job. They don't just do OT, they do PLC, they do electrical engineering, they'll do control and instrumentation, they'll also sweep up, they'll clean the tools. They've got many hats or many spinning plates, and they've had cybersecurity applied to it. What we are seeing, though, is that they need help, and that more IT professionals now, or security leadership, is moving into that OT space to help them with that knowledge. And this is not only where we're seeing IT-OT convergence on a technology level, we're also seeing it on an operational level. But what I wanted to talk about now from my perspective is that OT CISO, or that CISO who's taking OT responsibility, is he fully informed? So an example that I'll go up here is the NIST regulations. Is everyone familiar with the NIST regulations? And that's from an IT point of view. Yeah. They fall into OT. So your business not only can fall, if you have OT in your business, you can fall under NIST as not only operative essential service, but critical national infrastructure. And with NIST 2, the types of businesses now that fall under that for operative essential service is broadening. So what was before research and development in manufacturing or in pharmaceutical didn't fall under it, they do now. So there are a lot of businesses that actually are stuck in the UK at the moment where we don't know what we're going to do. Are we going to fully adopt NIST 2 and bring it into our UK, or are we going to do, I think it's NIST UK Plus or something along those lines, where we can't not disagree with what they're saying, but we're looking to try and adopt for what we need and what will be our approach. But in OT, the responsibility around NIST and other regulations like COMA, which is the control of major accidents and hazards, fall into the responsibility of duty holders who are assigned to the site or the presence of where that environment is. And they are individuals who are responsible. They have the obligation to make sure that they are doing everything they can in that environment. That responsibility hasn't been passed on to the CISO at this moment in time, but that CISO needs to be informed of what this requirement is and what their obligations are from a legal perspective to ensure that he can support them, he can give them the funding, but also then what they're doing will meet his overall cybersecurity requirements for his responsibility. And I know I've got NIST up there where it talks about enabling operators of essential service to describe their current cybersecurity status. They have to do things like CAF assessments, the cyber assessment framework, where they assess themselves and look at what they need to do. And if you look at the water industry, just as an example, they've currently just submitted all their PR24, which is their budget planning for their next AMP period, which is an asset management phase, where they look at a 5-year period where they're going to invest in ICA, so instrumentation, control and automation, major civils works where they may rebuild old water treatment works or sewage treatment works to optimize them. Maybe it's because the original process isn't fit for the volume that they need to cope with now. They then might fall under different types of regulations like COMA that I've mentioned. And in COMA, there are 5 simple steps that they can follow: risk assessment, security measures, incident response, personal awareness, and then obviously the life cycle of that particular asset. But what I wanted to do is give an example of that then for that manufacturer or for that responsible person and show you how the risk ownership then would actually happen on these particular sites. So just picking site A and site B, same business, 2 different sites. First aspect of IT/OT convergence. This isn't a machine-to-machine convergence. This is a personnel. OT are using an IT asset for, as I've put up there, using a computer maintenance management system. Effectively, the OT engineer is being issued, has anybody heard of ServiceNow or Wipro, those kind of solutions? They're being issued jobs to go and fix things, go and sort out a pump or a valve because it's got a failure on it or it needs its maintenance doing on it. So they're issued that task. They then go away into the OT environment, they fix that device, they then go back to that IT shared resource, and they then update what they've done, and then that is closed out. So that is an IT resource and an IT service that OT use. The risk stays with IT because it's in their domain and it's their solution. But then when you look at NIS or you look at COMA, apologies, white on white isn't the best here. When you look at something like the requirements, Site A and Site B are different. So Site A is not an operator of essential service. Site B is an operator of essential service. And the difference between the two, and I don't know if I've got a scan. Oh, no, I've turned it off. Okay. There we go. Wrong button. Don't do that on an OT site. Press the wrong button, trust me. So non-OS want to adopt best practice. The OS side have a requirement that they need to meet. They need to mitigate that risk and they need to show evidence of how they're mitigating that risk. It's an OT compliance with an OT ownership of risk, not the CISO. So you see here that one of the key things that we're going to get out of this example, or we're going to get out of this new owner of the, well, say owner of the risk, but basically it's a glorified title. He needs to have a good communication line, he needs to have good people in good places, and he needs to have that ability to be able to take on board different people's perspectives and requirements to know what is best for them to put in solutions. And then you can get an OT compelling event. Some of these sites have safety systems, and that safety system is to make sure that they safely operate on certain key aspects of their process that are risky. So in the nuclear industry, you can pretty much find that every system has a safety system associated to it. Oil and gas, you'll find that they have safety systems. Water treatment, in some areas, because of the chemicals they use on sites, not only do they fall under COMA regulations, but they also have to have a safety system to manage the types of chemicals in those environments. Because if those chemicals were to spill, combine, they could cause an environmental impact. And that's not only to the people on the site, but to the local population. So to summarize this aspect and the critical insight, yes, a lot of the organizations, predominantly all now, are saying it's going to be residing in the CISO. But what I'm trying to say is that from my perspective and my understanding, that CISO is going to have a good communication link to sites. He's going to have a good knowledge of understanding geography to understand what is local requirements as well as what is a global requirement and how he then is going to be able to implement it. And one of the interesting areas, and it's a difficulty, and I always say this when I'm with customers, I do not want to be in your position because you have a very difficult position. In the UK at the moment, although NIS2 has got a requirement to be implemented into legislation in Europe, NIS2 we will have to be compliant with to be able to do business across into Europe for what we're providing. So it's another issue that our businesses are looking at in OT. And they are trying to adopt that, but at the moment they're getting pushback locally because we don't know what we need to do. So we don't want to go and do everything if we didn't have to do it locally. So next critical insight. Am I all right for time?
You're good.
Okay. Professionals rely on a range of solutions in OT. Okay. So, forget the OT bit, but does your organisation have a plan in the next 12 months or in the future to consolidate your security vendor solutions moving forward? So, ignoring OT, show of hands, do you have a plan to consolidate vendors? Okay, that's good. A lot of bar charts there. So, in this year's survey around the OT professionals, what they're looking for is cybersecurity solutions that first and foremost detect known vulnerabilities. And one unique challenge OT teams face is that downtime is far more critical in OT than it is in IT. So in IT, you get a vulnerability that's identified, you get a patch from Windows, you go and deploy that, and then everyone can restart their PC. Do that in OT, and you've got an operator who's sat in front of a desk who's running a process at this point in time, and it says reboot now, he is going to panic because he can't see his system, because in some instances the control room is away from the process, and you have individuals, maintenance engineers and so on, who are walking around that process, that they are in control of making sure that that system or that process and that sequence is running safely for them. And in the time that the reboot needs to happen, anything can happen to those devices. They can go high temp, they can go out of range. It can cause an issue for them that they are charged with to be able to correct through their knowledge of operating that system. So what we've seen here as a result, and obviously in the OT, the key areas that have grown, obviously as you can see here, apologies for I'm trying to be as steady as I can, is network access control, security operations center, manage and monitor security events, and event analysis. To be able to get those in OT, we've got to do a lot of work first, because most OT people like to tell you they are air-gapped. Everyone know that terminology, air-gapped? It's one of them fights that you don't get into and you walk away from. If somebody says they're air-gapped, you don't directly say to them, you're not air-gapped. You basically talk to them, ask a few questions, and then let them realise that they're not air-gapped. They've just probably not got a permanent connection. And they'll soon pick up and go, yeah, we've got this engineering laptop, so we have to go and take it and get an internet connection. And then once we've got the internet connection, we downloaded the firmware updates. We then go down into OT. Oh, great. As soon as they start talking, they realise, yeah, you've just beat me. You've got me to explain what I do, and I've just realised I don't have an air gap. And so it's a better way of getting them to understand it. And I remember speaking to a customer, and I asked him to explain the whole process, and this was a meat manufacturer, apologies. But I got him to explain to me, because his perception was the only connection between IT and OT I have is a SCADA system. And as soon as he went through the whole process, at the end he went, I've just realised I've got about 10 different connections between IT and OT. And I was like, I counted about 10 as well, yeah. And he's like, we need to have a bit more of a conversation then around what we're doing and how we're interconnecting and how we can start to rationalise this out, because we don't want everything connecting out. And one of the things that we talk about with network access control that can help him, but then when we talk about security operations center, those customers that we're talking to who have, say for instance, an air-gapped environment, are being told to connect that environment now and connect it straight to the internet, puts the fear of God into them. Because we've never had to go to the internet before, and now you're telling me to improve my security, I've got to go to the least trusted part of the network. Because within OT, our environment, still talking in that sense, is the highest trust area, because we don't allow things in, we don't allow things to be put on willy-nilly. As we go further up, we trust less. And obviously, you're now telling me to be able to get threat intelligence, I've got to put an asset discovery tool in, and that asset discovery tool needs constant connection to a cloud platform. I don't like that. So, this is where the broad range comes from. Lots of pretty colours, lots of dots. Endpoint detection and response, you recognise these acronyms, yeah? That's good. There's nodding heads, and they're awake nodding heads, not sleeping ones. So, let's look at procurement route in OT. So we're going to build a new site. We can build a new warehouse, we can build a new pharmaceutical site, we can build wind turbines. What they will do is they'll go out to something called a major automation contractor, similar to Emerson. And Emerson will propose their cybersecurity solutions. And they can be from many different vendors who they've gone and got approved for the technology that they use. Could be another site, say for instance Edinburgh, down the road in Glasgow. They want to upgrade one of their lines. And to upgrade one of their lines, they will go out to Krones or somebody like that who provide the full line of automation for the bottling, the dispensing, palletizing, and so on. And that system integrator will then say, right, you need this version of PLC or SCADA from this vendor, because that's who we use. And then to be able to give you a cybersecurity aspect, we will then go and provide you our cybersecurity solutions providers that we've gone and tested. So straight away now, you've already got 2 different procurement routes with 2 different sets of cybersecurity solutions, which is where that broad range is coming from. And then you've got the CISO coming in and going, I want to issue a corporate program across you all. And I've chosen a vendor, and that vendor's OT aware. And that vendor now is going to come in and he's going to start to put in firewalls for you. He's going to put in switches. He's going to help us with endpoint detection and response in DMZs and so on. So straight away, 3 different reasons for change in the business, 3 different OT solutions, and not all of them are synergized. So what I'm trying to say on this slide is, as you can see at the bottom, the OT solution selection process for cybersecurity and OT is as broad as the point solutions that are available on the market. And I believe this is what is the growing need for cybersecurity and OT, is that it's not just the customer, it's also the major automation contractors, the system integrators, and it's the cybersecurity vendors who are out there providing you the different solutions. And an old colleague of mine used to say, pinch with pride. And this is an IT approach. And have you all seen it, the cybersecurity mesh architecture? Yeah. So taking something from IT into OT they don't like. So I just say to them, I like this approach. You can have many different vendors across many different point products, which require many different resources. In OT, all those different coloured resources is probably one person. And as soon as that person goes to another business or retires, they need to replace that. And what they'll find in the business is, actually, now we've got to replace it with individuals rather than just one person. And all those individuals are providing the information to a SOC. And what I like to show them is that the best way and an easiest way to adopt is taking that cybersecurity platform approach. So looking at consolidating your vendors into that platform approach. And Fortinet, apologies for using the company name, but Fortinet on this approach down here with switching, LAN, next-gen firewalls, we are working a lot with OEMs to be able to get rid of that issue for the customers, to be able to show them that our solutions are certified in their environments. So if the business has standardized at a corporate level on a FortiGate, 40 switches for IT and OT convergence, and then hopefully in the OT arena, those people now in that particular area can be seen to be using that technology. And what the benefit that will come from that is they can start to consolidate the resources, and they can start to consolidate them around platform rather than individual points. And the benefits that come from that is reduced overhead, reduced staff, and also the training aspect and requirements. So critical insight number 3, still okay?
5 minutes.
Okay. So number of intrusions are still troublesome. So nobody ever answers this. Has anybody or anybody they know experienced an event in the last 12 months? Nobody puts their hand up for that. Okay. If you want to see somebody who has put their hand up and put it up very globally, there's an interesting video on YouTube from Norsk Hydro who got attacked, which was an aluminium company, and they're very open with what happened to them. It's about 3 or 5 minutes. BBC did it. It's really interesting to have a watch of, so I'd watch that if I was you. So from the result, we have had some open and honesty within the people that we've gone and interviewed. And what we can see is it's increased with regards to enterprise IT systems, but not OT. Both IT and OT, but not OT impacting IT. Okay? But to give some example of this recently, and both examples here are both IT and OT were impacted. So does anybody know Volkswagen? Drive a VW? Yeah, waiting for a VW? My brother was, 24 months. Anybody know Knights of Old? Logistics company? Kettering and, okay, well, they're not here anymore. Okay, so VW manufacturing impacted in IT because basically from what we were told, They had an IT disruption because renewals went out for key switches, routers, and firewalls. And what they've identified is those license renewals went out of renewal, and effectively it caused issues for them in IT, and those issues in IT then went down to OT. OT wasn't impacted directly, it was impacted indirectly because it couldn't get the information out of the order management systems that were hosted in IT into OT to allow the lines to continue. And what they also identified is that basically it was an automated approach to the renewals, and nobody was in the business anymore who approved it. So it got to finance, and finance just didn't approve it. So that's why the renewals didn't happen. The company in Kettering, Knights of Old, have been around. They started with horse and cart. That was their logistics they started with. And basically, the joint administrator, they've now gone out of business, but the joint administrator has said that compelling events, the cyber attack was the straw that broke the camel's back. And effectively, the reason was because of that cyber attack, they couldn't secure investment in the business to be able to fix it or to continue as a business. And therefore, the cyber attack was the event that basically took them out. And then the fourth and final. So the average cybersecurity maturity level is improving. So hands up if you think it's good, your cybersecurity across your business, whether it's OT or in IT. There's lots of opportunity then for those vendors downstairs. Okay, so I'll be quick on this because I know we're getting close. So cybersecurity posture. So what we said is almost every organization now, 98%, includes OT cybersecurity posture in the broader risk score shared with executive leadership and the board of directors. And is that because of critical insight, number one? Because they have a voice and a responsibility now at that CISO level, they are passing that on and putting that up there to be able to show them what that score is. But also, is it because the business are seeing more OT sophisticated attacks, and that's why businesses are understanding how critical it is to them around OT cybersecurity? Maturity has changed. You can see that originally in the 2022 report, people were level 4, where they leverage orchestration and automation, and it's dropped this year. And where you can see level 3, predictive behavior established, is increased, and so is level 2, level 1's dropped, and level 0's dropped. Again, is this because of IT-OT convergence, not just at a machine-to-machine basis, but also for the resources now being shared? It's giving different perspectives, it's giving different information or metrics in the way to assess maturity. Is it because every man and his dog is out there doing a risk assessment in OT because they're being told to do risk assessments to understand what their risk is? Level 3 and the increase in it, in my position, is I think a lot of the critical national infrastructure businesses are proactively doing things, but I think that the reason why people have dropped and gone into level 3 now is because they've forgotten about the life cycle approach, where they have to keep going, they have to keep reassessing, and they have to keep doing improvements. In OT, though, there is a way that we can adequately quantify posture and maturity. So everybody knows standards, regulations. Anybody ever heard of 62443? No. 27001? Yeah. 62443 is the equivalent in OT. It's the de facto series of standards for cybersecurity within operational technology, and it touches not only the asset owner, the vendors, and the maintenance teams, so system integrators or the teams internally. But in a certain part of the series of standards, 3-2, there is an ability for them to do a risk assessment in operational technology. And right at the start of this, they can identify what their current posture is by going and collecting all the information they have on those systems. So going from system architectures, PHAs, anybody want to guess? Process hazard analyses. It's what's used in risk assessments for safety systems. And then at the bottom, you've got standards, best practices. So talked about early on regulations, NIST directive, CAF assessments, OG 0086, which is used for COMA regulations. First 3 stages within this risk assessment is identify the system under consideration, perform an initial cybersecurity assessment, and then partition the system under consideration into zones and conduits. Once you've done that, you can understand your maturity and get your current maturity position. Because what you'll get out of each one of these is you'll get an updated system architecture, which shows you lines of delineation, who owns what, where the boundary is between IT and OT. You'll get an evaluation of the initial risk, and you'll also get an initial or a revised zones and conduits diagram. Road to SLA is a security level achieved. So 62443 allows for customers to set security level targets and then show through evidence what security level they've achieved. So is the current posture and maturity acceptable? This is how we're going to be able to associate it to the levels that we've seen. So we take ZCR1's outputs and we go, right, we've got a security level target because we've identified the initial risk. We go to the next stage, ZCR4, and go, well, is that tolerable? Yes or no? Well, no. Let's go down. Yes, it exceeds. Let's go and do a detailed risk assessment. And effectively, the detailed risk assessment in an operational technology environment is, the first element of the risk assessment is we have no defense. So let's see what the criticality is of the industrial automated control system, that environment, to the business. And they don't just look at it on a profit loss, they look at it on a political, an environmental, technological, legal. They look at everything with regards to what the risk is, and they build a financial model out for that. They go through each individual element and identify threats and look at what they can do. First thing then is, if they do unmitigated, are all the residual risks at or below tolerable risk? The answer is no. So then they do the first element of mitigation. And they will continue that loop until they have met their tolerable risk. And once they've met their tolerable risk, they will then get down to ZCR6, and at ZCR6, they will document those requirements and push them back out into the business. And then just to, well, the final slide. So how is cybersecurity helping? And the most interesting part of this that I've seen is the aspects in the middle, that it's improving operational efficiency and operational flexibility. Trying to get a return on investment for cybersecurity and OT is next to none because they don't see it giving you a process improvement, efficiency, or an energy improvement. But that feedback now where they are seeing it's improving operational efficiency and operational flexibility means to me that they're seeing business benefit through digital transformation, Industry 4.0, because it's now a secure approach to the access to the data in that environment. So to summarize and finish, responsibility was the first bit. So nearly all organizations are going to put responsibility in the OT CISO. My perspective, are they fully informed for the decisions that they're going to have to make? Second, countermeasures. So OT professionals, by the looks of it, are relying on a wide range. So is this going to benefit them in the long run? I don't believe it is. I think they need to start looking at platform approaches and the way that they go forward, consolidating. Intrusions, although we've seen a decline, ransomware and phishing are seen as the major threats. And obviously through the convergence of IT and OT now for that data extraction and passing of updates and so on, phishing is becoming more of a risk to the whole network, not just the IT network. And then obviously finally on maturity, professionals are now providing more realistic self-assessment of their organizations. Is this due to because of the perspectives that are in the room, or are they going through aspects where they're doing a real fine-tooth comb assessment on risk? Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
No problems. Thank you.
Does anybody have any initial questions? If not, I'm sure Ben would happily take them down on the stand a wee bit later on. But any questions? Yeah.
Oh,
at the front.
I was just wondering how like AI and machine learning is helping or hindering this relationship between the two.
So from Fortinet, we have AI learning obviously in our FortiGuard labs, and we also have it built into our firewalls. So in this instance, that perimeter firewall between IT and OT is really helping, because the convergence there is you are getting OT aware protocols going through that firewall as well as your standard IT protocols going through it. And the more that we see going through those firewalls, the more it's going to our threat intelligence and the more we're being able to do improvements on. So through that, we've now been able to help customers in the OT space, especially who are under change configuration management. We've developed something called virtual patching, where they can patch the vulnerability at a network level because they can't patch the machine for another year or 2 years. So that's how it's helping them.
Yeah.
Yep, one more question.
Yeah. With the conversion of technology,
with the conversion of technology and obviously the CISO having overall responsibility in the OT world as well as the IT world, is it easier for someone in OT to understand IT or someone in IT to understand OT if you're looking at skills conversion?
Can I have another question?
You can phone a friend if you want.
No, it is a great question. There is that issue between IT and OT. And the issue, very simplistically, priorities are different. So have you ever heard of the CIA? Confidentiality, integrity, availability? Flip it for OT. It's availability, integrity, and confidentiality. So priorities are completely different between the two environments. OT need to have availability of their system, and they need to believe that everything they do is a true act. And that's the example I gave about a patch. You can send a patch out in IT, and everyone will update their PC, and they'll get annoyed because they've just lost the Word document that they were updating or the quote that they were putting through. In OT, you lose data in a pharmaceutical environment, you've now compromised the batch that you're running and the risk to the people who are going there. So that issue is getting broken down because IT and OT are starting to talk. But one of the biggest things, and we talked about this on Tuesday, is communication. We need to be open and honest and put out there that we don't know everything. And that was one of the things that I really adopted in my early career in engineering, because I came from business IT degree into an engineering field, and I was like, I know nothing. I don't know how to wire a plug, let alone how to wire a panel or a cubicle that you're putting into a power station. But by being open, they were able to put it down into layman's terms for me and then tell me what not to touch compared to what to touch. And it's as simple as that. Whereas if we can have that open conversation, that issue will go away, and OT will then start to see the benefits that you're going to bring to them, and they'll see where they can apply it and explain to you why they can't apply it everywhere else. Because I have been in a room where the IT director has said, we are annoyed with your system because every time we send an active scan out on the network, and the OT guy went, what? And he went, yeah, every time we actively scan on a Monday, you actively scan our networks on a Monday. And he was like, yeah. He's like, so you're the reason why our networks keep dropping on a Monday and we keep having to get the maintenance team out to restart all the systems. And he was like, what do you mean? And he's like, right. So the basically straight away then, and he was like, oh, we thought we owned all the network. And he's like, no, you don't. We own this network. We're responsible for the risk of anything happening. We're the ones who get called out and have to go and fix it. That then allowed him to understand, although they have a KPI where they need to go and scan to see if everything conforms to the IT requirements, and all these OT devices weren't, now they understand why. Now they understand why they were coming back and saying, we need to look at a different vendor for AV and whitelisting, because it's not supported, which impacts our support model, impacts the way in which we can respond to faults with service level agreements. So that communication does need to be there.
Great.
No problems.
Thanks everybody for coming along. Our next session's at 1 o'clock if you'd love to come back. But yeah, if we could show our appreciation for Ben one more time, that'd be great.
Thank you.